Can you tell us about your background and how you first became interested in design?
Sure, of course. Well, I was always interested in making. Did it from, as soon as I could use my hands, I was making anything I could get my hands on. So kind of Lego, obviously, but luckily growing up in the country as well, in lots of space, that meant I was, building tree houses and all sorts of structures and things like that. So that's how I began. Then I was clearly good at drawing and anything art related. So that kind of set my trajectory through school. Then ended up getting a scholarship to boarding school, and then led on to art college in London. And I chose a course in London which was running at Camberwell Art College, and it was a joint honours. So they were interested in linking up a fine art with a craft. Looking back now, I realised that even though I was going to art college, I was kind of setting myself up for design, really. I could make a ring or I could make a building, essentially. So that's what drew me to that. And then after that, I slowly started getting disillusioned with the art world. Because as you know, kind of conceptual art is almost the major art form of the last few decades, and I was getting more and more disillusioned with that. And so actually, while I was at Camberwell, I thought possibly I might want to change to architecture. So I went and sat in on lectures at the AA in London. That's the Architects Association, for those who don't know. But I was still interested in architecture, but I thought possibly later on in my career I could kind of come around from the side and start collaborating with architects in that way. So it's almost a little bit more like product or installation. So I was there for 10 years, and that was really where I kind of cut my teeth at making. Any size, various materials, various processes. So that I found that very exciting. But alongside that, as I said, this kind of disillusionment with the actual art world kind of continued. And I really started to get more interested in the idea of furniture and designing furniture. Because to me, obviously, I'm still making a physical object, but it has clear practicalities and applications. So yes, so I released my first piece in 2007. That was called Sideshed 2. And funnily enough, thinking about it, it was actually, you could almost call it a hybrid piece between a sculpture and a piece of furniture. Because although when you look at it, it looks like a minimal multifunctional object, the actual conception of it, or the reason I made it, was actually to do more with childhood and imagination. But in childhood, when you're playing with your toys or your dolls or whatever, you play with scale. Surfaces become huger, larger, spaces increase, etc. And really, that piece was about sitting the sitter, the viewer, kind of inside a surface somehow, so that they were kind of closer to that possibility. But that was very well received. Sadly, it was a prototype, because if that was an actual sellable object, I think I would have made rather a lot of money, because I received emails from all over the world for a long time. I think in terms of an area in design, for me, it's chairs. I'm in love with chairs, because they're just very unique things. They can contain so much information, and they're also an extension of kind of architecture. Obviously, also you touch them, you engage with them. They're comfortable or not comfortable, or how is the comfort controlled to the intended function of the chair. Thinking of how I work almost more as an architect than a furniture designer in a way. It's kind of working out a system of how Well, there's a phrase in architecture, the envelope, the design envelope of a building, knowing all the parameters and the limitations and the functions of the building, and they kind of that sets the limit. It brings me satisfaction when I realize the design that I'm working on can have an extra function or meets an extra need. Going forward, developing my practice, that is something I'm kind of turning into more of a methodology. Knowing how you're going to approach the complexity that you're going to approach each design or each project. How are you going to meet this need? How are you going to perform that function, etc. And then how then are they all going to relate to one another and be in sync? Really enjoying making everything out of wood at the moment, and veneers and laminations. So luckily that's quite easy to be sustainable in that area, because I can make sure that everything I'm purchasing is from sustainable stocks. And you've been in the making world or the designing world for a long time. I think hopefully you arrive at that, you mature and you arrive that that's a kind of normal state of mind. You should design efficiently from the very beginning. It is important to use the materials around you as much as possible. Also creates an extra layer of meaning and purpose to what you're doing. I actually dropped in on a company in London last week called what are they called? Fallen and Felled, I think they are. So they get hold of trees, mature hardwood trees in and around London that are going to be destroyed, basically, or have fallen, been felled, and they process them and get them ready for architects, designers, furniture makers, etc., to buy. So they're fantastic. There's actually the first. I don't know whether you know the wood London plane trees. They're all around London.
Okay.
They're very distinct looking trees. And it was the first time I'd actually seen the raw kind of planed timber. And it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm kind of thinking, how can I start using it in some projects? Really, really lovely. And that again would, as I said, would create another layer of meaning to an object that me being in London use and kind of show off.
Is there a project that you've worked on that you're particularly proud of or that you're excited about?
I would have to say my last chair. I mean, it's well, to me it's a little bit old now because I kind of more or less finished it about 2 years ago. But I think in terms of what I was saying to you earlier about the kind of different functions, different layers of a design piece lining up and working together, I think that was definitely the time where there's been the greatest union in between the concept, the material, and the process. Working on that, it was quite a long process because I started off just simply wanting to make a timber dining chair, which was organic, which looked organic, and also it was the first piece of design that I worked on predominantly at the beginning on the computer or digitally. Normally I was hands-on playing with materials, but that time I was looking to begin and control everything in a digital way. I'd say beware of kind of how you're told to do things a little bit. Obviously, I'm not saying to disrespect your your boss or your lecturer or nothing like that. But all I mean is look for how best you think, because we're all different in terms of how we think, how we process, and when you apply that to creativity, I think there's even more of a reason to work out how you do it